What is going on YouTube? Gabmus here and welcome to episode 22 of the Tech Pills weekly live stream. Alright, let's jump right to the first news of today, and this is a pretty sad one. Doom Eternal introduces a mandatory kernel level anti-cheat. So, this was pretty hard when it hit, and when I came to know this news, I currently am really sad and disappointed by Bethesda, id Software, and everyone that was involved with this. It's honestly a terrible day for Linux gaming and gaming as a whole in general. So, we're talking about a technology called de novo anti-cheat. And just to be clear, there was some confusion online about this de novo software because de novo makes two main softwares, and one was originally included in Doom Eternal, and that was de novo anti-tamper, which apparently didn't cause any problems on Linux, so it wasn't all that big of a deal. It's basically DRM to make sure that, well, people don't pirate the game, even though on launch, Doom Eternal in the Bethesda launcher shipped with a DRM-free executable, so that was very unnecessary. And currently is. If anyone wants to pirate the game, of course, they can just do it since, well, the DRM-free executable is out there and it's been leaked already. And as you know, once you put something on the internet, it's not easy to take it back. And the point here is that, so the novo anti-tamper has been there from day one and wasn't really ever an issue, as far as I know. What we're talking about here is the de novo anti-cheat, which is a different piece of software. So, the novo anti-cheat is a kernel-level anti-cheat software. It means it has the same privilege as the operating system, as the kernel itself. It's not very much different from a driver for a device, and it's now mandatory in Doom Eternal. Even if you're just planning on using on playing the single player campaign, you still have to install and have de novo anti-cheat running. And of course, since this is a Windows kernel level driver and it's basically malware, it doesn't work on Linux. And the really sad thing here is that a game that previously worked perfectly on Linux. There were some initial hiccups, of course, since the game was so new, and there were some missing Vulkan features, but since then they've been solved and the game has been practically 100% playable on Linux. And I mean, it's already a Vulkan native game, so as far as like the raw game goes, there are no issues in running it. It was running just perfectly, and there are many Linux gamers that actually bought the game to play it on their Linux systems. What happens now is that, well, I think months at this point after the release, Bethesda decided it was a good idea to introduce a very invasive anti-cheat system to limit the number of cheaters in the online multiplayer. And now I understand that everyone hates cheaters, and when you play in an online game, you don't like to have other people to have an unfair advantage over you just because they want so hard to win. You just want to have fun, and no one likes cheaters, all right? But this is not the solution. This is not the solution because, one, if you don't plan on playing multiplayer, you don't need an anti-cheat in the first place. So it could have been like an opt-in feature where if you wanted to play multiplayer, you had to download and install the anti-cheat. But that wasn't the case. They decided that if you want to play the game, you have to be running the anti-cheat software. And again, I want to stress it again, this anti-cheat software doesn't work on Linux. There are other anti-cheat software that play well with Wine and Proton and Linux, including the one that Valve uses for their online games like CSGO, Dota, and Team Fortress 2. So it's not like they didn't have any option. In fact, there are many anti-cheat software, and I know for sure that many of them don't have any problems with Linux. But instead, they decided that they wanted to break the experience for many paying customers here, playing the game through Proton or other means like Lutris or other distributions of Wine. by breaking the game for Linux users and using a kernel level anti-cheat software that's basically just a big old malware, if you ask me. So, let's try to stay like neutral here from the Linux perspective. I am a die-hard Linux user. I play my games on Linux. I do everything computer related on Linux. I don't have a Windows machine, and I don't plan on having one, and I will never have one because I don't like proprietary software. I don't like to have to pay for my operating system. I like to pay for my operating system. I like to donate to the operating system and the other open source projects that I use. I don't like to pay for Windows because, let's say it's a piece of garbage operating system. It's unsecure, it's slow, it has it tracks you, it has telemetry, and you don't have control over it. There's no customization, and development is just awful with it. You don't have a package manager. The list could go on forever. But I'm not here to talk about how much Windows sucks, because you already know what I think about it. And let's just talk about this anti-cheat system. So the first thing is that even for Windows users, if you're playing this game on Windows, and I'm completely fine with that. I mean, it's your computer, it's your life, you can do whatever you want. But the very sketchy thing here is that this software has practically been sneaked into your system if you're running Doom Eternal. Because when you initially bought the game, there was no indication of this anti-cheat software being needed to play the game. And now, after months after release, months after you start playing the game, maybe you're just like halfway through the game and you want to finish it. If you're on Linux, well, you have no chance of finishing it. But if you're on Windows, all of a sudden you need to install malware on your PC to be able to play this game. And most people, the very upsetting thing is that most people, of course, they just don't look at what happens during updates and wouldn't know that this de novo anti-cheat software has been installed into their system. That's because there was no mention of it when they initially bought the game. Now, this particular anti-cheat system is also particularly dangerous. As I previously mentioned, it's a kernel driver. It's a kernel level anti-cheat software. So this means that it has ring zero access to your system, and it can do basically whatever it wants with your computer, including recording screen, activating your microphone or webcam, recording your keystrokes, and intercepting your internet traffic. I mean, anything, if you can think about it, they can do it, because it's that level of power that you're giving them. Now, since it's proprietary software, of course, there is no way of knowing what they're doing, and there's no way of knowing that. I mean, I don't have any reason to believe that their intentions are good. But just for the sake of the argument, let's just say that their intentions are good. What happens if the software is vulnerable? What happens if there are any bugs or security vulnerabilities in this de novo software? It means that whoever manages to hack into the software to gain access to it through a vulnerability, not only it will make the anti-cheat useless by itself, because you can just bypass it. Once you have access to it, you can just go ahead and bypass it, but you can also have complete access to the host operating system. I mean, if you manage to hack into this kernel driver, and this goes for anything like that runs at kernel level, it goes for hardware drivers, it goes for the operating system itself. If you manage to hack something that's running in kernel space, you have complete access to the operating system. And that's very bad, because any malicious third party will be able to exploit any security vulnerability in this software and use it to their advantage. And I'm thinking about crypto malware, I'm thinking about like crypto miners, or I don't know, they just record some footage of your webcam and they just blackmail you or something. They can do everything. That's the point. If they hack into the software, they can do anything. But since I'm practically sure, well, it's my idea, but if you ask me, I think that this particular piece of software is, by its very definition, malware. So they have bad intentions. And let's say that a security analyst or someone that's particularly interested in this kind of software and what it does to your system wants to know exactly what it's doing. What you could do as a security analyst is you could run like a Windows VM, so a virtual machine, and analyze like the traffic that's going on and like that's going in and out of the virtual machine. You can do the same thing with a real machine if you have like a router that you can tap into, or you can use another computer as a router and analyze the traffic through that. And let's say that they don't find anything. So let's say security analysts look into the software and conclude that there's nothing wrong with it. This is, again, kernel level software. So what it can do is, after a while, it can just update itself silently without you knowing anything, and just trigger the very bad whatever that they want to do. If they want to spy on you, they can do that. They can just wait a while since like the dust settles, and they can just push an update that introduces telemetry and spying and tracking. And they can do that, and you will have no way of knowing, because at that point you're just accepting that you have the software on your computer. You probably don't even remember about it, and you're not constantly checking the traffic going through in and out of your PC to check if something's wrong. So of course, everything that can go bad probably will go bad. And let's just say, again, for the sake of argument, that they don't have any malicious intentions. Let's just imagine a big Facebook or Google executive showing up at the Denuvo's doorstep with 2 big bags of money, asking them to start mining their users' data. I don't think that they have any reason to refuse. They already have the system in place. They have, I don't know, thousands of users probably having this software installed in their PCs, and they can just go ahead and start mining data. If they like, I imagine if a big company like Facebook or Google, again, or other companies, there are many companies that are interested in mining users' data. These are just the 2 most popular ones that you can probably know about. If any of those companies decides that they want to know what's going on with people's PCs, they want to spy on people's PCs, know the traffic, know who they're talking with, know the people they're in contact with, and the emails they receive, and all that kind of stuff, they can just go ahead and talk to you, like whoever at Denuvo, and tell them to introduce this backdoor into the system. I don't think that they will refuse a monetary offer. Also because those data mining companies usually have lots of money, and this to them would be like just like an investment. So I don't really like this kind of software. I don't like the direction that that Doom has gone with this latest edition, with this latest update. At the end of the day, I'm sad to say that this here is a failure for the whole gaming industry. Anti-cheat systems are just plain bad, and there's no other way around this fact. Cheating is a problem, but anti-cheat software just makes things worse. Just one last word of advice before we wrap up this segment. If you bought the game, either you used to play it on Linux or you play it on Windows, I strongly suggest you to ask for a refund, as the product you bought at the time is not the same that they're now forcing down your throat. So with that, this concludes our segment on Doom Eternal. Again, very sad news, and I don't know, I just need to shake it off. So let's move to the next news of today, and this is very good news, and very good news for Linux gamers out there. Half-Life Alyx is now available officially on Linux. So, as you see, we're moving to brighter news, and so the latest chapter in the Half-Life series, Half-Life Alyx, critically acclaimed game, very nice. If you have a VR headset, it's probably the best game you can play right now, is now officially available on Linux, with, of course, Vulkan. If you were previously playing the game with Proton, just disable it in the settings and it will automatically download the latest Linux native build. This title seems to be particularly optimized for AMD GPUs, and that's probably apparently because of a lack of functionality in the NVIDIA driver. So I didn't know that the NVIDIA driver on Linux lacked functionality, to be honest, but apparently this is the case. So Valve is suggesting to play this game on AMD GPUs with the latest Mesa RAD-V driver, so with the open source drivers. So, I mean, that's good news for all of us in Team Red, I guess. Of course, you can still play this game with NVIDIA GPUs, but people have reported bad performance, and again, that's because of apparently missing features in the NVIDIA driver. So hopefully NVIDIA fixes that. And of course, this goes a long way to see how much an open source graphics driver makes things better. So I'm happy to have bought a 5700 XT. My experience on Linux has been just great, and I've had none of the problems that I've had in the past years with NVIDIA GPUs. The unfortunate news is that, of course, this game is a VR exclusive, so you'll need a VR headset and a powerful enough graphics card to be able to play this game. But I mean, that's what it is, what it is, and it's always nice anyway to see the promised Linux support finally getting to us. You see, Bethesda, take notes. Just try to shake it off. Anyway, let's move on to the next news of today. There's yet another Weyland Compositor in town, Tailwind, and I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that right. It's probably Tailwind or Tailwind. I don't know. It's Tailwins. So if you want to Google that or DuckDuckGo that, just go ahead and do it. So this is a Weyland compositor. I mean, it's a new Weyland compositor, and these days it seems that Weyland is really starting to gain traction. And I mean, it's like the time when people started writing all those different window managers for Xorg at some point in the history of Linux. People just, I mean, yeah, they just started writing all these fancy window managers, and here we are using them. I'm talking about i3, sorry, talking about i3, Awesome, BSPWM, Xmonad, Qtile. All of those were born under Xorg, and now we're seeing a new wave of Weyland window managers, or if you want to use a better, more appropriate term, a new wave of Weyland compositors making their way into into Linux, in the Linux environment. So this is the newest one that came into my radar, and it's called Tailwind again, and it describes itself as a modern Weyland window manager. It's written entirely in C, and that's very interesting to see C software being written in 2020. I mean, C is a great language. It's just not the easiest to use, and this means that the language is still alive, and I'm happy to see that. It supports both tiling and floating mode, so very interesting options there. And it can be configured with the Lua scripting language, similarly to the Awesome Window Manager. I honestly don't know how much this wants to be like a clone or competitor to Awesome WM. It seems that it has most of the features Awesome has, at least it tries to. Awesome is a very advanced window manager, I don't think that Tailwind is in feature parity with Awesome, but probably they're trying to imitate it. That's not a bad thing. I mean, it's a very interesting. I mean, Awesome is a very interesting window manager, and having some clones of it wouldn't be all that bad. So one of the things that makes it similar to Awesome, apart from the Lua scripting, is that it has a built-in shell that provides wallpaper, panel, widgets, and locker. And if you're used to window managers, you know that these are not usually pre-installed with the window manager itself. They're usually separate components that you have to install yourself. It uses a weird toolkit for the shell called Nuclear with a K. or nuclear GUI, and it seems to be an adaptable general purpose GUI library for C. So that's very interesting. And I mean, this whole project is actually, well, it's actually very interesting, and I'll make sure to keep an eye on it. I honestly haven't tried it yet because it currently depends on Pipewire 0.2, and I have 0.3 in my system, so I didn't want to mess around too much with that. I'll probably check it out in the future. So let's jump right to the next news of today. Kde Plasma 5.19 beta is out. So this is the newest version of the Plasma desktop, and it has just landed its the beta for its latest release, 5.19. This new update includes, well, mostly small improvements and quality of life upgrades, but let's actually see what's going on here. So we have improved panel spacer that now allows to automatically center widgets. Very nice if you want to use a panel as kind of a dock where you want to have your icons in the middle. The system monitor widget has also been rewritten from scratch, and it's been a while since I've looked at that, but if they also changed the look of it, it looks pretty sick. It's very nice. I mean, it's not intrusive as some conky configs are, but it's still pretty informative and, well, very nice to look at. Other additions include the systray applets and notifications have been reworked so that they are now consistent design-wise. There have been some usability improvements for sticky notes. There's now more control over the visibility of the volume OSD, and I don't really know what they mean with more control over the visibility. I think that what they mean is that if you want to disable the volume OSD in some applications, you now can do that. Hopefully that's what I mean. And if that's the case, that's a very nice addition. I always have problems, particularly when I'm running games and I just use the volume or change the volume and the volume OSD comes up. It can cause some problems in some games depending on how they're implemented. So having this option to disable the OSD is very nice. There's also some work done to have better integration with GTK apps. So GTK3 apps now immediately apply a newly selected color scheme, and GTK2 apps no longer have broken colors. I didn't know that was a thing. It's nice that they fixed it. So there's also been some work in the system settings app. They've reworked the default applications, online accounts, global shortcuts, and Tailwind rules, as well as background services, settings pages, so that they fit better with the new style of the system settings app. Also, when opening specific system settings pages from the app launcher, the whole system settings app comes up. So again, very nice. Having like the system settings page isolated from the rest of the app always felt kind of weird to me. So nice that they fixed that. And there's also some work done in Kwin that receives some improvements under Weyland. The subsurface clipping reduces flickering in many applications under Weyland, and screen rotation for tablets and convertibles now works on Weyland as well. Finally, there's better Flatpak support in Discover, now making it easier to remove Flatpak repositories and displaying the application version for the app reviews. So very nice features, great work to the KDE team, and it's great to see the new version of Plasma Desktop coming together so nicely. I mean, it doesn't seem like they introduced any radical changes to the experience, but I mean, it's still nice to have these kind of quality of life upgrades from time to time. And of course, that's something that at some point you have to do. It's not as exciting as working on new features or changing the design of the shell, but I mean, Plasma at this point is a very mature desktop environment, and it makes sense for them to just consolidate on the experience that they've created. So let's move on to the next news of today. Spine 64 is back in the news, and there's a lot to talk about here. So let's start from the beginning, I'd say. So as the PinePhone and PineBook Pro production is stabilizing, they're focusing on other projects in their pipeline. And of course, Pine64 at this point, they have so many things in their backlog. I mean, there's so much nice stuff coming out. It's really exciting. So, PineTab pre-orders are starting this month and will be shipping with Ubuntu Touch by UBports pre-installed. Honestly, the PineTab is not all that interesting of a product compared to the PinePhone or PineBook Pro, but it's definitely a lot more interesting when you take the price tag into account. It's just $100. It's $100 for a Linux tablet. This definitely makes it a very interesting device all of a sudden. And if nothing else, as a device to play around with. I mean, you can just give it to a kid and use it as a gateway drug to the inner workings of a computer or a Linux system in particular. And of course, if you're giving this to a kid, you wouldn't have to be too careful with it because, I mean, it's $100. If they break it, you invested $100 in the education of a kid, so that's not all that bad. So here's some specs for the device. It comes in with a 10 inches 720p IPS screen. It has a quad-core A64 SoC with 2 GB of LPDDR3 RAM, and it's the very same SoC and RAM configuration found on the PinePhone. There's that. And it has a 2 megapixel front-facing camera and a 5 megapixel rear-facing camera. Again, the same modules found on the PinePhone. It also has a 64 GB eMMC storage with micro SD expansion that also allows booting, and an M.2 form factor SATA SSD support via an adapter for additional storage. This one is very interesting. I mean, having like a full fat M.2 SSD in a tablet, that's kind of mind-boggling. As far as I/O, it has one USB 2.0 Type A port and one micro USB OTG and digital video output combined port. So kind of sad that they didn't go for USB Type C here, but it's $100, so I mean, I could live with that. It has a 6,000 milliamp hour battery, and it can be charged again via micro USB or via the barrel plug. So depending on what you need, you can use either. There's also an additional accessory for this tablet, a magnetic keyboard and cover with included trackpad that comes at just $20. Very nice pricing on this as well. So I want to look a little bit deeper into this add-on module. So this is a very new concept as far as I know, and definitely very different from anything I've seen before. It's basically a separate PCB that you have to install inside of the PineTab to get these additional functionality. So you actually have to wire these up yourself. And I mean, apparently it's pretty easy to open the PineTab, so that isn't that big of a deal, but definitely very interesting. I don't think I've ever seen that, adding M.2 functionality on a tablet device or a laptop for all that matter. I mean, laptops, they either have the M.2 slot or they don't. This is completely new to me. Anyway, so this additional M.2 this additional M.2 module, as I already mentioned, supports SATA storage, but it can also support M.2 LTE and GPS. So if you're into that, that's an option. And also LoRa and RTL-SDR modules. So I don't know what those last two are. Apparently they are some industrial network options. So as for the SSD and the LTE option, they're probably gonna be useful to your average consumer, but these last two options, they're probably very interesting for industrial use cases. And this just makes me wonder what kind of companies are actually interested on this device. I don't know, I'd be curious to know that. But anyway, that's all for the PineTab. Let's move on to the PinePhone. There's some news on that too. So apparently they're working on an add-on for it to allow wireless charging. And this is very exciting. This goes a long way to actually understand how modular their systems are. And this add-on module should be really very straightforward and should take the shape of a simple replacement backplate for the existing PinePhone. It will allow wireless charging by using like the little pogo pins that you can find between the device and the back cover. So by using these pogo pins, they can just release like this replacement back cover that magically allows you to wireless charge your PinePhone. That's pretty exciting. On another note, they also seem to be exploring the option of creating a battery case for the PinePhone, probably using a similar mounting method. I mean, this would be very convenient. This last one of the battery cover, mostly because at this point the PinePhone battery life isn't all that great, because it's mostly a prototype device and Linux software isn't really optimized yet to run on phones. So of course the battery life will get better as time goes, but having the option to have a bigger battery will probably make your experience all that better, to the point that you can probably use this phone as a daily driver. So hopefully they managed to go through with that idea. Another interesting development on the PinePhone is the new Multi Os Bootloader. So apparently the community just developed this bootloader that's unoriginally named PineLoader, and it allows you to choose the operating system at boot time, just like on your desktop PC. If you have something like Grub or Systemd Boot, you know, those bootloaders allow you to choose the operating system you want to run, and it allows you to test different distributions available for the device without having to flash anything on it. And the options that are available, at least according to the screenshot that's on the Pine64 article for this news, the distributions that we see in this bootloader are Ubuntu Touch, Postmarket OS, and Selfish OS. But of course, I'm pretty sure that anything will be recognized by this bootloader. So very interesting option, particularly for a device like this that's, again, mostly prototype, and if you buy it, you probably want to switch back and forth between different distros, and maybe you want to use Ubuntu Touch as your daily driver, and at the same time you want to test like Postmarket OS with Fosh to play around with all those nice mobile GTK apps or something like that. So having this option is definitely very interesting, and great work to the community, to the people who created this bootloader. This goes a long way to actually understand how much of a success this project is. People are actively working on it. We are all enthusiastic about it, and the project itself is moving forward, and that's just great to see. Anyway, guys, this is gonna wrap it up for today's video. Thank you very much for watching. I really do appreciate it. If you like this video, please make sure to press the thumbs up button down there, and also remember to subscribe to my channel if you want more of this. Also, make sure to join the TechPills community at techpills.technology/community. You can find the link to the Telegram channel, the Telegram group, and the Discord server. And you can also use the convenient QR codes that you can find on the left side of the screen right now. All right, guys, thank you again very much for watching, and I'll be seeing you in the next one.